When I started TEDx, I had to choose a topic to write about. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the most indecisive person out there. I took hundreds of notes and participated in quite a few class discussions before I finally decided I wanted to make my talk about social groups. Relieved and satisfied with my final topic, I thought the rest would be a piece of cake. I thought I only have to do a ton of research, write a 10-minute long speech, memorize it, and present it in front of what now feels like 1,000 people. Clearly, I wasn't prepared for the massive workload around the corner. After pondering what kinds of social groups I would talk about, I decided I would talk about social groups mainly in middle school. From that day on, I started to watch all the different groups in my school. Whether I took notes, asked questions, or just watched these different groups, I learned so much. My main focus, I realized a few weeks later, wound up being about two social extremes in schools worldwide. Groups classified as populars and groups classified as nerds. I know this sounds harsh, but these stereotypes are a reality. We have all seen movies or TV shows or read books involving this topic. The Breakfast Club, for those of you who haven't seen it, is about a variety of students who are given a Saturday detention. Each student is completely different from one another. This movie is an example of proof that we have these stereotypes that everyone is used to. The movie Mean Girls is another example of these groups and stereotypes as well. So many other groups, labels, and stereotypes are shown throughout all different kinds of movies, books, and TV shows around the world. But the question is, why are these groups so normal to have, and why are some considered better than others? When I walk into a middle school cafeteria, specifically here at LCJSMS, I am struck by the crazy amount of groups that we have. I couldn't begin to name every single group. For those of you out there who are adults, you had these groups when you were growing up. In fact, you probably remember the queen bee of your class, or maybe even the dorky nerd. You had these groups, I have these groups, my peers have these groups, and my kids are most likely going to have these groups. It's inevitable. So if I was going to learn about popularity for months, which was my original idea, I needed something to compare it to. Nerds, I thought, was the perfect fit because they were the closest opposite. So let's start off with the literal meaning of each. The dictionary definition of popular is liked, enjoyed, or admired by a particular person or group, whereas the definition of a nerd is a foolish or contemptible person who lacks social skills or is boringly studious. The stereotypical definition, or the more common definition, of a popular is a really pretty, skinny, athletic, mean, rich, cool girl who thinks she is better than everyone else. And the stereotypical nerd is a really, really smart, socially awkward, uncomfortable, unfashionable loser. I know these stereotypes sound extremely harsh, but these also are a reality. So before you think I am rambling on, you must know where I get this information from. For one of my social experiments, I made an anonymous survey for students to take here at LCJSMS. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders of all different races and genders took the survey, and overall came to a common agreement on what each group means and tends to be like. This is proof that everybody stereotypes in one way or another. A second social experiment I did was I sat with different lunch tables for a week at a time. For those of you who don't know, the lunch table you sit with, especially here at LCJSMS, pretty much defines your groups of friends. It's a pretty big deal. After sitting with all these different groups for so many different weeks, I pretty much believed that my experiment didn't work. Then, after a lot of thinking, I realized that there was no material to support these definitions I created after doing my survey. So then I thought even more, and then I thought that this was actually what I was going to try to prove. All of the groups were way more similar than different. I mean, of course, some were boys, some were girls, some were black, some were white, some were really fashionable in my opinion, and some weren't. But they had more similarities than differences. This relates back to the Breakfast Club in that although everyone seemed very different on the outside, when they came together, they ended up realizing how similar they were. I realized then that if people did that at my school and gave each other more of a chance, they might actually drop the stereotypes and maybe even become friends. So the reason these groups tend to form is because of a child's social development. The transition from childhood to adulthood is the most important time in a child's life. Step 5 in Erik Erikson's stages of social development has a huge impact on children's lives. This stage is where children, ages about 12 to 18, begin to realize that they need to have a role as a person and soon as an adult. They then begin to analyze who they are and they want to figure out what their identity is exactly. During this time, they don't know what to do with themselves, so they tend to stay in groups. While in these groups, they focus on being the best, or what's also known as popular to children at this age. So after this, the cliques and groups of friends don't matter as much to them because they know who they are and they want to be that person, no matter if that's considered popular or not. Because of this, the meaning of popular goes from the stereotypical cool to the actual definition, well-known. Therefore, it has less importance to these children as they finish this stage and soon become an adult. After doing all of my research, I realized something extremely crucial to my talk. I know there are stereotypes, and I know there's nothing I can do to change them, nor should I. It is realistically impossible to stop these stereotypes because there's often a sliver of truth to them, which is greatly exaggerated. I mean, why else would we have them if there wasn't? But what can be changed is our outlook on the people in these stereotypical groups. Stereotypes shouldn't affect what we think of people. Individuals have to decide whether they like a person or not based upon their personal traits. So what makes this whole topic even more interesting than it already is that if we're going to be technical, the stereotypical popular group should actually fall short of the nerd group on the social ladder. In life, there are 5 steps to fulfill a person's needs based off of Maslow's hierarchy. The first step in Maslow's hierarchy is physiological needs, followed by safety needs, which is step 2. The third step is love and belonging, followed by self-esteem, which is the 4th step. And the last step on the ladder is self-actualization. Although this ladder is for everyone's needs in life, it actually makes sense when using it for a middle school hierarchy. So at the level I am talking, most populars and nerds make it past the first 2 steps, physiological needs and safety needs. But the third step is where they differ. A lot of populars are thought of to gossip about each other behind their back or be mean and rude, which means they aren't true friends with one another. Without true friends, they lack belonging, and without belonging, they can't make it past the third step, which is love and belonging. Meanwhile, the stereotypical nerd is satisfied with their groups of friends, which means they can make it to the next step. For the populars that do in fact make it past the third step, they would most certainly get stuck on the next step, self-esteem. Based off of the stereotype, they are uncomfortable with themselves, they do not have much respect from others, and they are not unique. Populars are so stuck on the fact that they have to be popular or want to stay popular that they only care about themselves. While being so self-absorbed, they don't care about others, which is part of the reason they lack respect. All of the populars do this, which means they're all very similar. Going along with them losing respect from that, they also gossip and are mean to other people behind their back, which is another reason they don't have much respect. They're self-conscious, so they try to be the best, or what's called popular. Meanwhile, the stereotypical nerd can make it past this step because they don't care what other people think of them. They can make it to self-actualization because they know who they are and they like it. They appreciate and respect themselves for the people they are. Overall, the stereotypical nerd should be thought of more highly than the stereotypical popular, which is contradictory what people think. But the problem with this is that we're doing that based off of groups. One nerd may be completely different from another nerd. I mean, for example, they might be very uncomfortable with themselves and fall in the self-esteem step, while another might be totally fine with themselves and make it all the way to the top. At no point will every person be exactly the same as every other person, no matter if they are in the same group or not. This is why we should start to see people as the individual they are, and not as the person the group is perceived to be. Individuals should move up and down the ladder, not groups, and individuals should be judged or idolized as the people they are, not as the group they are seen to be in. So throughout the year, I have gone crazy and dedicated so much time and so much effort to watching how all of these groups interact. I've had headaches over why all of this happens. And throughout the process, I've done so much research and had so many facts going through my head that it's all become a blur. But after putting the whole thing together into a final talk, I know I'll never look at groups the same. I can say for a fact that learning about this all year has changed my perspective on groups, and especially on the way they work. I now feel way more comfortable talking to anybody, no matter what group they are from, according to the rest of the school. And that's the best feeling in the world. So I know that not all of you out there have lunch tables to specifically define social groups for you guys, but especially if you really look, you'll definitely notice these groups. So I challenge each and every one of you to go outside of your social norm and talk to someone who's not in your social group, willingly, because you never know what kind of friends you can make until you actually try. Trust me on this one. Thank you.